So far on this channel, I've talked a bit about Sumerian history and that of Mesopotamia in a very broad sense, and mostly in terms of people and events. In this program, though, I'm going to go into something a bit different and talk about Sumerian religion. I think it's a really important topic and deserves some mention here. Why? Well, for over 3,000 years, the gods of ancient Sumer were worshipped by Sumerians and nearly every other people who permanently established themselves in the region. The religious ideas promoted by the Sumerians played an extraordinary part in the public and private lives of all citizens of Mesopotamia. It was the source or legitimacy for their laws, institutions, the inspiration for their art and literature, and pretty much pervaded every part of day-to-day activity for these people. Long after the Sumerian language ceased to exist, their religion was more or less adopted by the newcomers who came to Mesopotamia. It was almost like, you come into this land, you will worship these gods, no matter what you worshipped before. Whether they were Akkadians, Amorites, Kassites, Assyrians, or whoever, those peoples who stayed in this land adopted the prevailing Mesopotamian religion that was in existence since Sumerian times. When you think about it, you come to realize that Assyrian-Babylonian civilization of the 1st and 2nd millennia BCE is not that fundamentally different than that of the Sumerians. So this is why I believe that anyone who really has an interest in understanding ancient Mesopotamia would do best to understand the religion that was practiced here. So let's do just that. So our knowledge of Mesopotamian religious practices and morality comes from a variety of texts that include epic tales, myths, rituals, hymns, prayers, statues, seals, inscriptions, and a lot of other things that were left by priests and kings. The earliest written forms of these go back to the earliest period, or at least to the period archaeologists and historians dub the early dynastic period, which is basically the years between 2900 to 2350 BCE. Of course, Sumerian religion goes back much further, but these are the years from which we start to see a lot of written and other archaeological evidence describing the religious beliefs and devotion of these people. This period is also known as the pre-Sargonic era, which was the term more commonly used before scholars adopted early dynastic period. So essentially either of these terms is correct. For our purposes here, they mean the same thing. Now, while the Sumerians lived in various city-states, each with its own patron god or goddess, they pretty much all worshipped a common pantheon of gods or deities, and had a similar, if not identical, story of creation, the cosmos, and how the universe and the world of the divine worked. This divine society was conceived as a replica of the human society of Sumer, and more or less organized accordingly. The heavens, the earth, and the world of the dead were populated with a multitude of gods and goddesses. Like those of ancient Greece and Rome, these deities had their own personalities and in many ways were much like human beings in their appearance and temperament. The difference, of course, was that they held supernatural powers and were immortal. Well, most of them were. Occasionally, you would have a couple of gods or goddesses duke it out with each other, and essentially one of them being killed and their body becoming some natural phenomenon or entity, like a constellation or a river. The point, though, was that they were more powerful than human beings could ever dare dream to be. Just like in human society, the deities of ancient Mesopotamia were not all of equal status. At the lowest rung of the ladder were various spirits, which could be helpful like angels or harmful like demons. Above this were deities that were in charge of nature or various trades, such as gods of the mountains or those who protected metalsmiths. There were also gods and goddesses associated with animals, and they were responsible for their protection. After this were the gods and goddesses of the netherworld, such as Nergal and Ereshkigal. Then there were gods associated with war, such as Ninurta, followed by the gods and goddesses of astral phenomenon, such as the moon, stars, and the sun. These were considered to be very powerful, as can be seen in the frequent worship and hymns dedicated to them, such as those written for the popular moon god, Nana, also known as Sin. The sun god, Utu, also known as Shamash, was a commonly worshipped deity for obvious reasons. Everyone needs the sun. He was also seen as the god of justice and one who also dispelled darkness and evil. Now, as I mentioned before, each city had its own patron deity. For example, Nana was the patron deity of the city of Ur, while Shamash, or Utu, was the patron deity of two cities, Lagash and Sippar. At the top of the pantheon, or the hierarchy, were three gods, An, Enlil, and Enki. Now, An was the Mesopotamian sky god, one of the supreme deities of the pantheon. An is actually his Sumerian name. In Akkadian, he's called Anu. Now, An or Anu belongs to the oldest generation of Mesopotamian gods and was originally the supreme deity of the Babylonian pantheon. Now, he is one of the great figures of authority and decision makers in the universe. It's actually he who gives the gods their various duties and functions. He's also the one who can increase their status if he wants to. The same actually applies to Earth. An is the one who confers kingship onto an individual, and his decisions are regarded as unalterable. The next great god in our little trinity here is Enlil, also known as Elil in Akkadian. Enlil is his original name in the Sumerian language. Now, like An, he also could decree fates and establish or bestow kingship to an individual. Now, along with being an extremely powerful god, Enlil was also feared by many, especially because of his temper. In fact, it was due to one of these outbursts that the Great Flood was caused, that basically killed everyone in Mesopotamia. That's the legend. Very similar to the story of Noah and the Ark. Whenever there was a plague or a drought, that was also believed to be because of Enlil's anger with humanity. So I guess it's not at all surprising that many prayers dedicated to Enlil have been found, and these prayers are there to placate his anger and prevent droughts, floods, pestilences, plagues, locusts, and the like. Now, his earthly home was the city of Nippur, which was also the city that he was the patron of, and the place where his holiest temple was located. Now, next we come to my favorite god of the, we'll call it our Holy Trinity, Enki, also known as Ea. Again, Enki is his Sumerian name, Ea is his Akkadian name. Now, he was the mischievous god of wisdom, magic, spells, and also fresh water. So he was associated with life and all the good things of the world. Now, his home was in the ocean underneath the earth called the Abzu. Now, in ancient Mesopotamian mythology, Enki is the creator and the protector of humanity when the Great Flood arises. The story goes that Enki created humans out of clay so that they could perform work for the gods. However, Enlil got annoyed with the humans because they kept making a lot of noise and they prevented him from sleeping. So to deal with them, Enlil created a flood to wipe out all of humanity. Being the clever god that he was, Enki though foresaw this. So what he did was instruct a particular sage named Atrahasis to build an ark so that humanity could escape total destruction. So that, my friends, is a quick intro or a brief description of the three main gods of the great ancient Mesopotamian trinity: An, Enlil, and Enki. Now, while this trinity of An, Enlil, and Enki held a huge sway over the Sumerian universe, there were several goddesses as well. One of the most important ones was the mother goddess, Ninkursag, also known as Ninma or Nintu. Technically, she was the patron deity of the city of Kish. However, as the wife or consort of the god Enlil, she also had a temple in Enlil's home city of Eridu. Another very popular goddess was Inanna, who in Akkadian was called Ishtar. She actually held many interesting roles, for not only was she the goddess of love and fertility, but she was also associated with war and battle. In fact, for this reason, many kings, including Sargon the Great, chose Inanna as their protector and champion in battle. Now, being the goddess of love, it's not surprising that Inanna had many divine lovers, but one was extremely important, both to her and Mesopotamian society as a whole. This was the god Dumuzi, the protector of herds and flocks, and also the god of vegetation. The Sumerians believed that the planting seasons, as well as the reproduction of useful animals such as cattle and sheep, were dependent on Dumuzi, who every year had a sacred marriage with Inanna in order to make sure that this indeed would happen. Every year on the Sumerian New Year's Day, the kings of various city-states would reenact this sacred marriage with priestesses and temples dedicated to Inanna. Must have been a pretty fun day for them. Anyway, let's talk a bit about creation, or actually stories of creation, how the Sumerians believed that the universe was created. In terms of the world itself, the Sumerians believed that the earth was a flat disk surrounded with a rim of mountains and floating on an ocean of sweet water. Resting atop these mountains, but separated from the earth, was the sky. Below the earth was the netherworld, where the spirits of the dead lived. Now all of this was encompassed in a gigantic bubble in a boundless, uncreated, primeval ocean made of salt water. So who, according to the ancient Sumerians, created this world? Or rather, how was it created? The answer to this varies. Unfortunately, very little early Sumerian literature, meaning from the 3rd millennium BCE, actually survives. However, we do have some glimpses from various documents and works of literature that give us a clue into Sumerian beliefs on the matter of creation and its purpose. One story is that the universe was created due to a sort of general assembly of all the gods and goddesses. They decided, you know what, we just need a universe. It'd be a cool thing to do. Another version actually says that only 4 of them were involved. Then there's a version that was found in the ruins of the city of Sippar not too long ago. According to this version, the god Marduk was on a raft and sailing in the primordial ocean of salt and sweet water. He decided to take a bunch of dust, essentially throw it into the water, and voila, there you have the world. One Sumerian myth, known as Gilgamesh and the Netherworld, mentions in its intro that once upon a time, the heavens and the earth were initially united but later split apart. Another Sumerian poem from the 2nd millennium BCE, known as the Song of the Ho, tells that Enlil separated the earth and the heavens and created humankind, the latter which was created to provide service to the gods. In the Sumerian story, Enki and Ninmah, the lesser gods, or the smaller gods, burdened with the task of looking after the world, complained that they needed some help to do this. Ninmah, the mother goddess, went to her son Enki, who is essentially the cool god I was talking about, and is also known for being quite wise. He told his mother to knead some clay and then put it into her womb. Somehow after this, she magically gave birth to the first humans. So as you can see, and despite not having a lot of textual sources or archaeological finds detailing it, there are a good deal of stories with regard to Earth and its creation. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be a canon version of this creation story. So we have found, or not we, but archaeologists have found many different texts describing Sumerian religion in terms of hymns, poetry, and the like. Now from these, we know that the Sumerians, and later the Babylonians and Assyrians, looked up to their gods. Now I'm going to quote the French writer and historian Jorge Roux. I might have said that wrong. I'm sorry, I never learned how to speak French properly. But anyway, he says, and I quote, "As servants look to their good masters, with submission and fear, but also with admiration and love. For kings and commoners alike, obedience to divine orders was the greatest of all qualities, as the service of the gods was the most imperative of duties. The Mesopotamians put their confidence in their gods. They relied upon them as children rely upon their parents. They talked to them as to their real fathers and mothers, who could be offended and punish, but who could also be placated and forgive." So he says in those lines essentially what I wanted to say, but in much better language. Now, while the priests were in charge of carrying out various rituals, it was the job of everyone, from kings down to the most common person, to send offerings to the temples and ziggurats, as well as to attend to religious ceremonies and festivals. Now over here, I just want to bring up a point. It's very common for us in the modern age to have this view that all of these ancient religions, these polytheistic religions that only had, or who only wanted some sort of sacrifice from humans, they were cruel, what have you. And that necessarily wasn't the case. There were other things also that the gods valued. They simply didn't want offerings, sacrifices, scrupulous attention to religious injunctions. That wasn't the only thing. One also had to live a good and righteous life, show kindness and compassion to others, and also act justly. One Babylonian document states, and I quote, "To the feeble show kindness. Do not insult the downtrodden. Do charitable deeds. Render service all your days. Do not utter libel. Speak what is of good report. Do not say evil things. Speak well of people. As a reward for piousness and good conduct, the gods gave man help and protection in danger, comfort in distress and bereavement, good health, honorable social position, wealth, numerous children, long life, and happiness." So, I hope you got some knowledge of ancient Mesopotamian religion and the role that it played in the lives of those living during that time. Any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. If you felt that this video was helpful, please hit that like button, because it really helps the channel out tremendously. Thanks so much for stopping by, I really appreciate it, and have a great day.